So, namaskar. Good morning. Yes, welcome to our session this morning. Um, Thank you very much for joining us. I am Ramaa Devi, and well, that's my name. And as you know, over these Saturdays, during these weekend sessions, we've been looking at ways to enhance our wellness and our well-being. And today, we're doing something a little different. Today, our session will be on a complementary healing modality called Therapeutic Touch. And it's a passion of mine, and I'm super happy to be able to share it with you this morning. I'm not sure if any of you have ever had a therapeutic touch treatment. Maybe you can wave, no, okay. Or if you maybe practice some kind of complementary energy therapy. Yes, okay. So some of what you hear this morning may be familiar to you, or it could be different from what you're familiar with. But in any case, it'll be an adventure that we'll embark on together, an adventure of learning. The session this morning is going to cover a few things. I felt it was important to give you some context, a little bit of history about the modality itself, some of my experiences with the modality. I just want to check in with you before I go any further. Everyone can hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. A little explanation about what a session with a practitioner would look like. So if you came to visit me for a treatment, what that would look like. But mostly our focus today is going to be on using therapeutic touch for self-care. How can we use the functionalities and the practice to enhance our own well-being? So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be leaving with some practical tips, useful things for yourself in your life, in everyday living that will be helpful. So there will be some exercises. There'll be an opportunity at the end for some questions. So yeah, before we get totally started, let's just take a moment, settle ourselves in our chairs, feet flat on the ground, become aware of our spinal column, maybe straighten those shoulders and give the neck a little bit of a side to side movement. We roll those shoulders back. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes, focus on your breath. Maybe start in your diaphragm and bringing it up into the rib cage, perhaps raising your shoulders and then pulling them back to open the heart space, filling everything with oxygen and pranic energy, waking ourselves up, opening ourselves to receive new information, being fully present in the moment with each other, letting go of anything else we were busy doing this morning. Taking a deep breath in and then an exhalation. Opening our awareness to each other, everyone on the Zoom today. Calling into our sessions the masters of the light, the healing energy, and of course, our teacher and guide, our guru, Sri Vasudeva, to hold us in this space of togetherness for today's workshop. And when you're ready, taking one last inhale and exhalation, settling yourself in your seat, and then fluttering your eyes open so that we can begin. Okay, so as I said, first off, we're going to be just taking some history, learning about how therapeutic touch got started. And you can see on your screen, there are some slides to go along with this presentation. So we'll move from the cover slide to the next one. And you'll see a picture of Dora. And Dora Kunz, isn't she lovely? Look at that smile. This woman lived till I think almost 99 years old. And she was born in the Dutch East Indies in 1904, and the Dutch East Indies today is Tunisia. And Dora was a really special lady. Although I never got the chance to meet her, I can see people's eyes light up when they talk about her. She was the inspiration for therapeutic touch. And Dora was what, there are many terms that have been used to describe her. I put natural healer on the slide. Some people refer to her as a medical clairvoyant, a seer. If you Google her, you'll find that she wrote a book. She could see people's auras. So she was the inspiration. And Dora was raised in a family that was very connected to a belief system or a group called the Theosophical Society. And I thought it would be interesting just to let you know a little bit about the Theosophical Society, because I think it might resonate with some of us to know how she was raised, with what kind of value system. She was taught by her parents to meditate at the young age of 5. So I don't know when you guys learned how to meditate, but I was a lot older than 5. And Guruji always says, imagine the young children, the children that come into the Blue Star at such a young age and learn to meditate, and what a difference it makes in their lives. So way back in 1904, here was this little girl learning how to meditate at 5 years old. And the vision of the Theosophical Society, in the context in which she would have been raised, their vision is of wholeness that inspires fellowship, united in study, meditation, and service. So you can see why that would resonate with us, certainly with me. Their mission was encouraging open-minded inquiry into world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts in order to understand the wisdom of the ages, to respect the unity of all life, and to help people explore self-transformation. And their ethic was, our every action, feeling, and thought affects all other beings, and each of us is capable of and responsible for contributing to the benefit of the whole. So that's, the belief system in which Dora's parents raised her. And when she grew up and in her adult life, she stuck with the Theosophical Society. It was an important part of her life. As well, when she was older, she left the British East Indies. She ended up moving to and living in the United States. And she worked with a lot of medical professionals. They were very interested in what she could see and do. And she also worked with a fellow by the name of Oscar Estebany, who was one of the most renowned healers of the 20th century. And Mr. Estebany had started out as healing animals, horses in particular. Today we might call him the horse whisperer. He worked with horses who were not doing well in order to bring them back to optimal health. He had no intention of working on human beings, but as the universe would have it, one day one of his neighbors' daughter was super ill. Huge fever, nothing the parents could do seemed to help. They couldn't get a hold of the doctor, so they went running over next door and they begged him to come over and see if he could help. And that's how he started to work in the human field. He went over, he spent time with the little girl. And lo and behold, she got better. So that's about Dora and Dr. Estebani. Now we're going to move on to Dolores. And Dolores Krieger, a little bit younger than Dora, about 17 years her junior, met Dora at a meditation lecture. And she was fascinated, just fascinated by what she said. And Dora was a nurse. Actually, when she first met, Dolores D was a nurse. And when she first met Dora, she had taken a sabbatical to go to this conference. And so she continued to study. She ended up with an MA and a PhD in nursing. She stayed in the medical profession. She became a professor emeritus at the nursing science at the New York University. And she asked Dora a question that really got this whole thing rolling. She said, is healing like you're doing something that could be taught? Because in the past, healers, the viewpoint, the worldview was, that healing, the type of healing of the laying on of hands was something reserved for royalty, especially gifted people, spiritual leaders, not something necessarily that could be taught. And Dora's answer to D was that healing is a learning process. And so the two began to collaborate, ultimately creating Therapeutic Touch. And like I said, Dora was the seer, the inspiration, and Dee was the scientific mind behind it that would develop the curriculum, that would pull out of Dora what she was seeing, make her explain it to her, and so they could build a process together. So the first time the course was taught was at New York University in the master's program. It was in the early 70s, and it was called Frontiers in Nursing. And since then, these two were really pioneers in getting a complementary, energetic healing modality accepted by a medical community. It certainly helped that Dee was part of the community and that she had connections. And since that time in the 1970s, there are now over 100,000 people trained in TT in the United States, Canada, and around the world. So, what is TT? Well, the scientific definition, I'm going to read it to you because that slide's, you can actually see it, but I'll say it so we can go through the words. Therapeutic touch is a holistic, evidence-based therapy that incorporates the intentional and compassionate use of the universal energy to promote balance and well-being. It's a consciously directed process during which the practitioner uses their hands as a focus to facilitate the healing process by enhancing the client's own ability to heal. Well, that's definitely a mouthful, but that's what the official definition is, and perhaps important for us to know. The other piece of information I put on the slide is how the University of Maryland Medical Center describes this technique. They say it's a technique based on the theory that the body, mind, and emotions form a complex energy field, and that a balanced energy field is indicated by good health, while illness represents imbalance. So I think we've heard that before, and that is how the medical community at Maryland Medical talks about therapeutic touch. So given that wordy definition, what I'd like to share with you is some underlying concepts of therapeutic touch. And while this sounds a little dry and heavy in the beginning, I think it's going to be really useful when we get into the practical exercises. So basic concepts, all life sciences agree that physically, a human being is an open energy system. And this assumption implies that the transfer of energy between people is a natural and continuous event. Okay. The next one is about our anatomy. That anatomically, a human being is bilaterally symmetrical. So what does that mean? That means that in our human bodies, in our physical bodies, on each side of our spine, there's a mirror-like reflection for the most part. And this is the rationale that's been used to infer when we look at the patterning of the subtle body, that it is also like this. So the subtle body and the vital energy fields, it's felt mirror this anatomy. And then the other, one of the other foundational ideas is about prana. Prana is the most powerful and is one of the most powerful energies in the vital energy field. It vitalizes and animates all living beings. It can be conceived of as non-physical, energy-rich, a unifying force that penetrates every living cell. This next one is definitely important, that there is a universal healing field, a multi-dimensional domain, which is conducive to the reestablishment of a state of wholeness to injured or debilitated or ill functions or faculties of living beings. So there is a universal healing energy out there that can bring us back to wholeness. The last two, in a healthy state, life energy flows freely in and out of a person's energy field in an orderly fashion. You're going to hear this word order more than once during this presentation because it's the basis of what we're trying to establish when we're doing therapeutic touch. Okay. So, some of the benefits of therapeutic touch. Initially, a really important one is that it promotes a relaxation response. When we're unwell, when the body is suffering from something, generally it's not in a relaxed state. And so bringing us back to this state of physical relaxation ignites the body's ability to heal. It's been known absolutely to reduce anxiety and stress. There is a lot of research around how therapeutic touch has been used to manage pain, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. It improves sleep. So sleep is like super important in keeping us well. Resting the body is a really big deal. The older this body gets, the more I realize, how when it was younger, I could just push through that. But now sleep is one of the best things I can do to take care of it. So if you're having trouble sleeping, that could be problematic in keeping you healthy. TT, as I'll refer to it in this little abbreviation, can improve your sleep. We've talked about how it can facilitate the body's natural healing process. And just in general, it fosters a sense of well-being. Some of the places where TT has been researched to actually improve the healing process has been in the speed of mending broken bones. It can be done through a cast, and doctors have been amazed at how well and how quickly broken bones have healed when TT has been used. Also, one of the biggest uses for it in the nursing profession has been with neonates, tiny newborns who are in the world physically, perhaps before their bodies are totally ready to be there. They are struggling to thrive, and therapeutic touch has, hands down, when it's used on neonates, improved their ability to thrive. And then one of the other important ones is with cancer. Uh, Cancer is a big illness. Lots of people suffering from cancer in their bodies, and the treatment of cancer is oftentimes, well, I've heard people tell me they sometimes feel it's worse than the disease itself. All the effects of chemotherapy, the nausea, the sore bones, the achy feeling. And therapeutic touch has been proven to minimize some of these things, definitely reducing nausea. Often people have a treatment before they go in for a therapeutic touch treatment, before they go in for their chemo. And we'll hear later how they use it when they're at home. So a little bit about what it would look like if someone else was giving you TT, if you came to a practitioner, because it's the process is a little different than the one we're going to learn today for self-care. So what would happen if you came to see me? First of all, it would be important, I think, for you to have the following information. I would want to put you at ease. There are lots of people that have never had an energy treatment, don't know what it's about. They've come to the point where they would try anything to feel better. It's done usually fully clothed. You can be seated. You can lie down. So if a person can't get up, I like to use a massage table. You can't see me at my full 5'1" height here, but for me, it's physically easier for me if someone's on a table. But if you can't get on the table, it's no problem. You can do it seated in a chair. You can do it lying down. People can be on their sofa if we go to visit them. It can be, you can do it on someone in a bed. It's mostly hands-off. Yes, it's called therapeutic touch, but it's an energy touch. So it's usually done with your hands somewhere between 4 and 6 inches away from the body. But there can be touch. So if you came to see me and we had an introductory conversation, I would make sure with you that it was okay to touch, because it's not okay for everybody. Sometimes touching triggers trauma, or they just don't like that. So I would always ask you if it would be okay to touch. And then there's a process, and the process is really important for us to follow. And I always walk the client through that so they understand what to expect, along with telling them that it's probably likely that to actually feel the effects, more than one treatment would be a good idea. I usually encourage them to try a set of 3 treatments to actually feel what's going on, because the first time is very tentative. So creating a safe environment for them. Sometimes listening is really important, letting them tell, why have they come here, giving them the sense that not to look directly for an outcome. You're not going to get off my table today and everything that was ever physically wrong with you is going to be better. But this is a process that can help you heal. So the practitioner does a centering exercise, followed by an assessment. So we do a full body assessment where we're scanning the field and looking for subtle energy clues. Really important also that you realize that I am not a diagnostician. As a practitioner, I'm not a medical professional. I am not going to tell you that I think there's something wrong with your liver or your lungs. What I'm looking for, and all I could tell you if I would at the end of the session, would be where I found what I would sense as imbalances. So in certain places it would feel one way, and then I would sense something different in another area. So following that full body assessment, we would go through the process of rebalancing the energy, and we're going to see that in our own exercises today. We would end with grounding, and just before ending, I would ask the client if there was anything else they wanted me to do, because I may not have picked up on something. It's important. The client knows their body, so I'd ask them that. And then there'd be a period of rest. And that rest usually is about as long as the period of the treatment. And a TT treatment's not long, somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. But the rest period is as long. So I would tell them that, the treatment, my part of the treatment, the active part of the treatment is over. We usually offer them a blanket because while we're doing the treatment, they might tend to be warm, and then as everything settles, their body might cool down. And I would stay with them for that whole resting period, holding space, and just making sure that they don't feel like, okay, there she did that and walked away and left me alone. And during that time, I would take the time to reflect. And for any of you who practice yoga, you know that after doing yoga, there's Shavasana. Everybody relaxes into Shavasana. Everybody loves Shavasana. But Shavasana is also important because it's allowing the work that we've done to set into our bodies. So that's the resting period for TT is much like that. So that's what a treatment would look like if you came to an outside practitioner. Now we're going to move on to some of the other concepts of therapeutic touch. One of the main ones is this concept of inner self. And inner self is a foundational concept in the learning and development of the practitioner. DORA and D refer to the inner self as a timeless link between the personality and the spiritual, the inner self being the guide or the teacher. And they say every human being has an inner self, and that inner self is a consciousness at its highest or deepest level. It's the space of our true self. It's always a center of peace and quiet, where there's clarity of mind, joyfulness, and a sense of inner strength. So one of the things that I learned, I didn't know initially, but that I've learned as I've practiced TT and then was confirmed, was that therapeutic touch was purposefully designed by these two women as both a technique for healing and an inner journey for the practitioner. The activity of sustained centering during a session provides an opportunity for the inner self to enter into our daily activities. And, as seekers, we're often asking the question or saying, I felt that, I grabbed it, and then I went back into life and, somehow I forgot all about it. So by practicing this, we are being given the opportunity to bring that feeling into the activities of our day-to-day life. It's a process that facilitates transformation in the practitioner as we become more sensitive to the universal healing field, and it develops our compassion towards those in need of healing. So that's, the therapeutic touch and the practitioner. Our focus today, self-care, our own well-being. How can we take that clearly between now and noon? We're not all going to become therapeutic touch practitioners, but we can take parts of this process and use it on ourselves. And that's what I'm excited to share with you today. To be a practitioner, you take a certain bunch of level of courses. To be a recognized practitioner, it's very rigorous because Dee and Dora wanted this to be accepted by the medical community, and because Dee's background was in nursing, there are 70 case studies that have to be done. You have to have a mentor. It can take, I've seen people take, anywhere from a year to 5 years. So it's a rigorous learning to become a recognized practitioner. But 6 years ago, two ladies, one who is the founder of TT in Canada, Crystal Hawk, and another recognized practitioner, and she's also a teacher, ALISON Cook, created a course called Therapeutic Touch for Self-Care. And today's practice is based on that course. So before just diving into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about these two ladies. And on your screen right now, you can see Crystal. Crystal Hawk has been a psychotherapist for 40 years. And she was introduced in the 80s to TT at a conference. And then a few years later, someone brought Dee Krieger to Toronto, and Crystal got to meet her. And she invited Crystal to a place called Pumpkin Hollow, which is in the States, and that's the headquarters for the Therapeutic Touch organization. And she invited her down, and she wanted to teach her and train her on how to do the modality and maybe bring it to Canada. And Crystal was actually the first non-nurse to learn and be trained at Pumpkin Hollow. So what inspired Crystal to develop a course for self-care? Why would you develop something that many people do for a living if everyone can do it for themselves? Well, Crystal had volunteered at the Gilda Club in Greater Toronto, and this is a resource place for people living with cancer. And she had volunteered there for 18 years, and this is what inspired her to create the course. She has taught well over 150 workshops. She's traveled all over the world, Canada, the UK, Australia, the old Soviet Union. And she is also the co-founder with a lady by the name of Mary Simpson of the Ontario Therapeutic Touch Network. So I've actually met Crystal. I met her at my first TT conference. I had completed, I believe, my last level of training, and I went to this conference. And there she and Mary Simpson were. Two ladies in their late 80s, okay, at a conference, walking around. They were bright, they were energetic, they were knowledgeable, they were completely approachable and authentic. And here I was, 30 years their junior, just astounded at the energy they had. Their skin was radiant, they were healthy. They were giving 1.5-hour, 2-hour workshops, and they both told me the same thing. It was living their TT. So I was sold. I had already kind of felt guilty when I was giving treatments. At the end of the treatment, I felt terrific, and I thought, geez, here I am. I'm supposed to be making these people feel better or facilitating their health and well-being, and 20 minutes later I'm feeling relaxed and healthy, and I'm looking at these two octogenarians and I'm thinking, okay, this is definitely something I want to know more about. There's definitely something here. So Crystal teamed up with Alison Cook, a recognized teacher with over 25 years of experience in TT. And Alison comes to TT with a very personal story, as I think is often the case for many people who come to energetic healing modality. In 1986, her husband David was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, and this is a long-term neuromuscular disease. And he had surgery to remove his thymus gland. He was prescribed drugs to suppress his immune system. And as a result of this, he was not sleeping well. So then they gave him sleeping pills to help him sleep better. And he didn't like them. And I've heard this from a lot of people with sleeping pills. You have a good night's sleep, but then you wake up in the morning, you feel groggy or not clear. It's just people feel it's not worth, it's not a balance. So Alison was at a quest. She went on a quest to find something that could help David. And she enrolled in a TT course at a local college. And of course, once during the course you've been taught something, they send you home and they say, okay, now you need to practice. So Alison decided that she would practice on David. So she asked, could she do this? And he said yes. And she did the whole TT treatment. And when they were done, she said to him, so did you feel anything? And he said, nope, not a thing. And then he promptly rolled over and fell asleep. And he slept through the night. And that was the first time since returning home from his surgery that he'd had a full night's sleep. Within a week, he'd given up the sleeping pills completely, and Alison was well on her way to becoming a TT professional. So she's been providing TT to the residents of Sterling Manor Lodge for over 25 years, and the administrators of this is a seniors lodge, note that the residents who have received TT have fewer psychosomatic illnesses, they sleep better, they're less anxious. And she's also provided TT as part of the pastoral care team on her church, helping people through cancer treatments, surgeries for hips and knees, helping people through grief, and through their transition in palliative care. Alison tells her students that TT will change their lives and that it's a journey that takes you deeper into the understanding of yourself. So, the benefits of TT for self-care that we are going to experience this morning. We can learn to help ourselves when we're not feeling well. We can learn to take care of minor aches and pains. We can use this TT as a complement for any kind of medical program we're undergoing. We can definitely benefit from learning how to center ourselves. We can gain a deeper understanding of our energetic system. We can develop sensitivity and intuition. And perhaps one of the most important things is we can learn to treat ourselves in a compassionate and caring way. Part of the course that Crystal and Alison have come up with focuses on meditation and guided imagery. In today's session, we're not going to spend a lot of time on either of those two things. I think we're no strangers to meditation, and probably nobody disagree with me if I said we already have the best teacher in the world for that. So we know about meditation, and most of us practice. We will spend a little bit of time with one guided imagery just so you can have a taste of it. And suffice to say that their meditation process does, much like ours, use one of the tools that Guruji teaches, which is the focus on the breath. So let's move on to the first and very important part of TT for self-care, which is centering. Centering is also a tool we use in the Blue Star on a regular basis. At the start of our session today, we came together, we centered within ourselves, and we centered within the group. It's something we do before all our meetings, any of our presentations. We come together in satsang, we take the time to center and come together. So when you're practicing TT for yourself, I know that we're always in a hurry to do everything fast, and we're going to learn some techniques today, but it's really, really important to take that first few moments to center before you begin, to find that place of peace and calm, to shift away from busyness and fast into that center of peace and calm before we do any activity. In her book, The Spiritual Dimension of Therapeutic Touch, DORA wrote, "We remain quiet for 2 or 3 minutes in order to realize that we have a center of peace and quiet within ourselves." So when we take the time to center, we quiet the chatter in the mind, we focus inward, we come to stillness. It brings us to present moment awareness, and it creates a stable reference point. So that if during your treatment of yourself, you kind of go off center, you can just take that moment to go back and think, okay, yeah, I remember at the beginning of this, I found that point. So really important before you do any of these things that you center. Okay, so now we're going to do a little exercise. You might have done this before. You may have watched Krishna Priya in her medical Qigong sessions. She talks about the ball of energy. So we're going to use our hands. I'm just going to move this a little bit so you can see my hands. You can sit in your seats and take that moment to center. You may wish to focus on your breath. And then take your arms, bring your elbows in close to your sides. Place your hands in front of you. I'm going to lift mine a little bit so you can see them. And maybe about rib cage level. And start about 2 inches apart. If you want, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes while you focus on doing this. And see if you can feel the energy between your hands. Maybe take your palms, spread them out a little bit to shoulder width. Bring them back together. Just play with this for a little bit. I'm going to be quiet in a second. I want you to focus, please, on any sensations you might feel of moving this ball of energy between your hands. Okay, so I'm just going to be quiet and you experiment with that a little bit. Okay, lovely. So just take a moment, let your hands drop down to your sides. Just observe anything that you're feeling. And then let's come back together in this space, fluttering your eyes open. And I'm going to give you an opportunity, if anyone would like, to share what the space between your hands felt like. Now, we're going to do this. You can work the same way you do in Zoom. You can raise your hand. My trusty team down at the ashram will recognize who's speaking if you want to speak, and they'll unmute you. So, if anybody would like to share, there's an opportunity there to do it. And if not, we can carry on. But I just wanted to, if anybody felt anything they would like to tell us about, this would be the time. I see a hand. Hi. We have to wait for them to unmute you. Okay, try again. Okay, so they're telling me you're unmuted at their end. Is your microphone unmuted on your computer? All right, so we seem to be experiencing a little technical difficulty there. I'm not sure why. Maybe you can put a pin in that thought you have. There will be opportunities to share. Are we having any luck? Okay. So I'm sorry about that, Zahir. There's a couple things we could do. You could type what you were going to say into the chat, and I'd be happy to, I don't know if everybody can see it, but I'd be happy to share it with the group. And also, I'm just going to, if no one else wants to say anything, I'm going to talk about some of the possibilities. Maybe you could nod if this was your experience. Some people feel heat. Some people feel cold. Some people feel tingly or spongy. Sometimes there's a magnetic pull. Okay. And sometimes people just don't feel anything. So that is, sorry, I'm just futzing with this one. There we go. And even if you don't feel anything, it's not a problem. You can still give yourself a good treatment. Right. So we're going to talk for a minute about our hands and our heart. You'll likely recall in the healing meditation, Guru always guides us to our heart. And he, in our heart chakra, he often speaks about how for some an expansion of the heart chakra may be felt in the hands. I have a beautiful quote. I don't know if you can see behind me here, but there's a picture of Guruji with his hands open, and it says, "Open your heart to the light that your touch becomes sacred." I have that in my healing room all the time as an inspiration to what I'm practicing in there. So in the development of TT, Dora and Dee based the system in the Indian Vedic philosophy of consciousness and the chakra centers. And Zahir wrote in the chat that he felt the energy flow to and fro between his hands. So cool. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'm glad to be able to share that with everyone else. And actually they could see that in the chat. So the heart is the place of compassion. And that compassion is what initiates the act of helping or healing someone who's in need. And it's one of the major properties of the heart chakra. And the Upanishads tell us that there is a close connection between the heart chakra and the hands. And some people say that there are actually small chakras in the hands. So that connection, that compassion, that desire to help, and the feeling of going to your heart space and having that transmute through your hands is definitely a part of therapeutic touch. So let's talk for a minute about self-compassion. I've referenced it. I've said it's an integral part of what a practitioner must feel towards their client. This work, this modality cannot be practiced without compassion and without a compassionate desire to help. And it's equally important as a part of self-care for TT. So let's think about that for a minute. How might you describe being compassionate with yourself? What words would you use when you would think about how can I treat myself with compassion? What does it look like when you're being compassionate with yourself? I think those are important points to ponder, because a lot of us want to be helpful to others and we see compassion as something we send out. But it's really important that we be able to treat ourselves with compassion. Some of the things that might look like is not judging ourselves, accepting ourselves as we are in this moment, being kind to ourselves, and treating ourselves with respect and understanding, and actively comforting ourselves. One of the other things I think I'd like to share with you is that when we are compassionate and helpful to someone else, we recognize that we feel good about that. We feel good that we've helped someone else. So an important part of being compassionate to ourselves is also being able to receive when people are offering that to us. And if you have a hard time with that, I might be one of those people. Maybe you are too. I'm okay. I don't. One of the nice ways I've read to look at that is that when I'm not being willing to accept compassion for another, I am not giving them the opportunity to have that good feeling. So that helps me to turn it around a little bit, to give it a spin that maybe opens me up a little better to being to receiving compassion and to giving it to myself. So as we prepare to give ourselves some TT self-care, we're going to talk a little bit about intention. It's another one of the key pillars. What's our intention when we're doing TT? It's to restore order. Remember at the beginning of our session, we talked about the order in the energy system and that order being disrupted. So our intention is to restore order, balance, and harmony in the field, and that everything we do will be for the highest good of the receiver, in this case, ourselves. And that we can go into this with ease, that this intention does not require that we get stressed out, that it's an effortless effort. And we want to maintain that intention of order and rebalance throughout the time that we're giving ourselves a treatment. Remember, energy flows where attention goes. That's so simple. If all you do is remember that and keep focused on your intention, it will be great. So the first step in TT for self-care is what's called clearing or unruffling. When Dora and Dee first started the practice, they used the term unruffling. Modern day, people tend to like the term clearing a little better. When you're having a session with a practitioner, you remember we said they do an assessment. When you're doing it on yourself, you likely know where you're feeling the pain, what's bothering you, why you want to do the treatment. So we go straight away to the clearing. What is clearing? Well, I'm going to use an example that kind of uses the word unruffling. Let's use the example of a bird in a bird bath. And if you've ever seen a bird in a bird bath, what do they do first? They unruffle their feathers. All their feathers, they kind of look fat and all the feathers come up. And they're getting rid of, they're getting the water in there and they're getting rid of all the dirt and yucky stuff. And then as they finish their bath, they start to become smooth and sleek again. So that's what the process is about. In a person, let's say we have a headache, we have congested energy. And that's like the unruffled feathers. And when we give ourselves a treatment, we're taking those feathers back to that smooth and sleek state again. So in order to clear, again, we're going to use our hands, and we're going to use the palms of our hands about 2 inches above the body. And we're going to be moving in either a downward motion or a side-to-side motion. And you can use long strokes, or some people like to unruffle using short strokes. Either one works, whatever's comfortable for you. And while we're doing this, we're going to imagine that the energy is flowing freely without restrictions through our body. Some people like to repeat an affirmation when they're doing this. They like to say, order, balance, harmony. As you do this more often, you're going to know what's comfortable for you. What do I like? What works for me? And although clearing is only part of the TT process, clearing itself can be used in first aid. I'm just being quiet for a minute because I'm hearing some background noise. Are you guys okay? No disrupting noises? Okay. So we can use it very quickly for first aid, taking that moment to center. But if you get stung by a bee, if you have a small cut, if you burn yourself on the stove, and we're talking, small burns. If you have a big cut and you need stitches, go to the hospital. If you strain your back, stub your toe, hit your funny bone, that one is just like, oh, we've all done that. Strain your ankle. You can use TT right away. Take a moment to center yourself, and then you can do this clearing that we're going to do. A few other tips. We talked about cancer patients who've been known to have pain in their hands or their legs after a treatment. They've found if they clear the areas at bedtime, they can sleep more easily. If you're going to have blood taken and you're going to have an IV put in your arm, if you clear a little bit before, it helps the medical professional find a vein more easily. And if where your pain is a place where you can't reach with your hands, it's not a problem, because energy flows where attention goes. So if your pain's in your back, or I can't reach them between my two shoulders, you can clear from the front, and it's still going to be effective. All right, so now we're going to clear a hand. So sit up in your chairs. You can see, if you see the slide, there's a picture of this woman sitting really straight up in her chair. And what I'd like you to do is pick a hand that you're going to clear. And if you can sit with your feet flat on the floor, that'd be great. And if one of your hands actually feels a little different from the other one, maybe the one your dominant hand might be tired, or you're always on the keyboard, maybe that's the hand you want to choose to clear. And you're going to just place that hand on your thigh. Okay, just your arms relaxed. You're placing your hand on your thigh. You're going to take a few minutes to center. And using the other hand, I'm going to lift mine up so you can see. Using the other hand, I invite you, with your palm facing down, starting just above the wrist, to start to clear, and clear beyond your fingertips. Okay? So just clear from the wrist through your fingertips, a nice rhythmical, gentle motions. And as you're doing this, imagine that you're making space for the energy to flow freely through your field. Focus your thoughts on what? On an ordered, balanced energy system. Some people are visual. Some people like to see something. So that you might be one of those people. You could imagine a soft light or a gentle flow of water. Now, while you're doing this, unless your arm's getting tired, you can maybe reach up to your shoulder, go down the whole arm, drawing always down past the fingers. Just keep clearing. Move in a way that feels natural to you. Okay, now we're just going to stop. We're going to rest. And I invite you to notice how your arm feels. Okay. So coming back to the group, we're going to talk a little bit about grounding, because grounding in TT, if you hear this word, it's used a little differently in TT. So there are actually two ways that grounding comes into play here. What do you think of when you hear the word grounded? you probably think of being down to earth, connecting to the earth, not being flighty, and having, really a good sense of the physicality that's around you. And that's one of the meanings. That's how we ground ourselves. And we can do that by walking, by not letting our mind, fly off into a million things. But just so you know, when TTers talk about grounding, they are talking about what you're doing in self-treatment for yourself, or what the practitioner is doing for the client. And that is facilitating the flow of energy through and beyond your hands and feet. So when we're grounded in ourselves and giving that treatment, it's another thing that we're familiar with in Blue Star is really important. And that's detachment. Detachment from the outcome of the treatment. Detachment from the thought around perhaps a curative exercise. And that may seem to be a contradiction from our intention, but I think it really isn't. Our intention is to restore order and balance. Our intention is not, I'm going to fix this. It's going to look like this when I'm done. So that would be the difference. And one of the things we have to remember about TT is that we're working on all levels of the body. So the physical body, the emotional level, the mind, and the spirit. And the outcome may not come at a visible level. So we have to be just detached. Whatever happens, as long as our intention is to restore order and be for the good of the recipient, that's all. That's enough. So, how do we ground ourselves? I talked about walking. I talked about allowing ourselves to not have flighty thoughts. We can do this by a mindful awareness and connection to the earth. So I'm going to give you one other way that maybe you can do it. At the beginning, we talked about doing a guided imagery. And this one is a really nice one for grounding, I think. So again, settle yourselves into your chair. I invite you once again to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And listen to the sound of my voice as I go through this visualization for grounding. With your eyes closed or softly focused, focus on your breath. Cool air flowing in, warm breath flowing out. Imagine that you're walking on a long path in nature. You see ahead of you a tree that seems to be important to you. A special tree with lovely, lush green leaves. Allow yourself to walk closer to the tree and observe it. Standing tall, rooted deeply in the earth, buffeted by nature, yet still standing tall. Now imagine that you too are a tree. Your arms reach up to the sky like the branches of the tree, reaching to the sun, feeling the warmth of the sun's energy. Your body is the trunk of the tree, standing tall and firm. And out of your feet, long roots grow deep into the earth. Roots that keep you grounded and strong, able to withstand the winds of nature. If it feels safe to you, You might even find that you can step inside the tree and become part of the tree. Either way, imagining yourself as a tree or inside your tree, feel the universal created energies moving through your feet deep into the earth. Feel the ordered flow of this energy. Feel the harmonious flow of this energy, bringing with it a feeling of deep peace and calm, a sense of being fully grounded on earth, ready to face what life brings you. As you continue to feel the universal loving energies flowing through your branches, down through your trunk, and through your feet deep into the earth, feel the flow of this energy, bringing with it a feeling of great joy, of being right where you are meant to be at this time. Know that you can return to this place, to this tree, and to this image of yourself as a tree, firmly grounded, energy flowing freely at any time you wish. Now, thank the tree for being your helper, bid goodbye, and return to your seat the way you came, becoming more aware of your body and the chair you're sitting in. Begin to deepen your breath. Maybe take a big stretch. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Awesome. So as you can see, the importance of that visualization for people who like that kind of practice is to bring them to that space that they know they can return to. It's that reference point. So now we're going to give ourselves a full TT treatment. It will be definitely the abridged version because I'm going to walk you through it. But while we do that, I'm going to tell you, once you've learned this, when you do it for yourselves, you can judge the time. All right, so as I said, a TT treatment can be done in a chair. I think we're all sitting in chairs today. It can be done in your bed. Awesome before you go to sleep at night. It can be done, you saw in that picture one of those, what are they called? Zero energy chairs, I think they're called, or zero balance chairs. The reason they're nice is because they help you reach the areas of your body. So let's find a comfortable position, and we're going to take a minute to center. We should be pretty centered at this point. We've done a couple of exercises, and we're going to start at our head with our hands 2 to 4 inches away. And we're going to move our hands outward for the first time. So we're going to clear out. Okay, starting from our head, we're going to move wide, taking it from the top of our head down to your shoulders, down to your midline, taking your hands down to your waist. And remembering that while I said you can do these big sweeping motions, if you feel that the motion you want is more of a fluttery motion, that's fine. So whatever is comfortable for you. We're probably not going to get to a point where you can see my whole body because I would have to roll back too far and take the screen down. So I'm going to talk you through it. Take it down through your midline. Keep going outwards. Keep this motion going. down to your knees and your thighs. If you can't reach any of these parts of your bodies, that's okay. In your mind's eye, set the intention and keep your hands moving to the side. So if you can't reach your ankles or your feet, then that's fine. You just keep going, maybe at your knees, and keep clearing. Okay, clearing out to the sides. All right, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that on yourselves. All righty. So that was the outward motion. So we'll just come back to center for a second. I'm going to start back at the head, and we're going to clear down a center line this time. Okay, so this time, instead of moving out to the sides, we're going to clear from the top in a straight line down and out. So from the top of your head all the way down the center of your body, down your knees, out your toes. Okay, clearing in a diagonal motion down the front of your body. Okay, remembering that everything you're doing down the front of your body is also working on the back of your body. I know while perhaps I'm talking, it's difficult to remember your intention, so I'm going to just be quiet for a few moments. You can focus either on the words, order and balance, or on a vision of clearing, the soft light or the water. Just keep clearing down and out towards your feet. Good job. All right, so like I said, when you're doing this yourself, you will get a sense of when it's time to stop doing that. The last place we're going to clear is our arms. We're going to start at our shoulders. Let's start with our right hand on our left arm. We're going to start from our shoulder, and we're going to clear down the arm and all the way out through the fingers. Okay, all the way out. A lot of stress, people who have a lot of stress in their shoulders, the nature of our work, we're always sitting at a keyboard, probably not in an ergonomic chair, so just clear. See that you're reordering anything, any blockages, any stiffness. And then when you're finished with the left arm, you can move over to the right. Always, yes, keeping in mind that I'm doing this probably a little more quickly than you would like. Clearing right from the shoulder all the way out past those fingertips. All right. So, now that was about 3 minutes. So a typical treatment that you would give yourself would be 5 or 10 minutes. And then you would rest, okay? And that's part of the treatment. It's not done and gone, all right? It's really important at the end that you find a comfortable spot, that you relax your body, and that you let the treatment set in. That's part of being compassionate towards yourself. Of course, if you do the treatment in bed, it's wonderful, because now you have your nice sheets and pillow around you. You can just settle down for the night and have a restful sleep. Almost everyone I've spoken to after TT does have a better sleep at night. So that is the process for TT for self-care. So Now that you know it, of course, you can intentionally practice it. You can decide to give yourself a treatment at night. But next time you stub your toe or burn yourself on the oven or the stove, take that moment to center and clear. Um, I have heard that people who I haven't actually done, I don't burn myself that often, but my teacher burned herself on the stove. It's not hard to do. Cleared through, and then she put ice on it. Like, we're not saying this is the only thing you should ever do. But the next day, absolutely no mark. It didn't blister. Um, I know that sometimes just what happens when we hurt ourselves is all that adrenaline starts flooding through our bodies, and so that moment of centering and that idea of clearing just sets the stage for your body to be able to heal from the pain quicker than what your mind is necessarily in that moment going to tell it to do. So we're going to end off with a couple of frequently asked questions and then give you a chance to ask a few questions. Often people ask, how do I know if the TT is effective if I don't feel anything when I give myself a treatment? So I'm going to tell you that if you don't feel don't feel anything when you give yourself a treatment, as long as you followed the process, there is a change happening within you. So trust that over time you will see results. I'm going to tell you a quick story, being mindful of the time. I had the opportunity to treat my sister-in-law who had rotocuff, a surgery, and then got frozen shoulder. And I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of what's important in my life and the practices I spend my time on that side of the family, they kind of think I'm a little out there. And so this would have not have been Karen's first go-to. She knows I practice TT, but she got so frustrated and so discouraged with people telling her she should heal faster. She wasn't doing the right thing. She didn't like her progress. So I said, if you'd like to try it, one treatment probably won't do it, but come on over and we'll give it a try. We had the conversation. She agreed to 3 treatments. In the end, we actually did 4. And the first time she said, didn't feel a thing. I said, that's fine. Go home. Come on back in a couple of days. And when she came back a couple of days later, she said, I went to physio this week. I said, yeah, how'd that go? She said, better. I had a little more range of motion. I said, that's great. Okay, let's do the next treatment. And the next time, she was much more comfortable, and she got off my table and she said, well, I didn't feel anything, but I'm really more relaxed than I can remember being in months. I said, great. Long story short, we did 4 treatments, like I said, over the course of four weeks. And at the end of those 4 weeks, she had a much better range of motion. And I'm not here to tell you it was all the TT, but I truly believe the TT had an effect. Of course, she did physio. And I think the other thing that happened is that relaxation response. She had to hold her arm tight like this after her surgery. She was stressed because things were not going as she had hoped. And by doing this treatment, we co-created a space where she had hope that something would happen. And she relaxed enough that her body could kick into gear with its own ability to heal. So that's just a little story that I share with you. The other frequently asked question is, I think all of you may have felt some energy in your hands, but a lot of people don't. They say, what if I don't feel any energy in my hands? And we did the exercise so you could have the experience, but if you're one of those people that didn't, don't worry about it. I have colleagues who practice TT, who've been practicing way longer than me, who tell me they didn't feel anything for years, and yet people would get off their table and tell them it was a great treatment and they were feeling wonderful. So what's really important is that you follow the process and that you don't, again, feeling something like that is looking and expecting a result, right? People feel things differently. You feel things differently at different times. I sometimes get a tingling in my hands. Sometimes I've had olfactory cues. I've smelled things. I'm not that visual a person, but some people see things. So do it without expectations and follow the process would be my best advice for you. So we are at the point where there's a big question mark that's going to come off on the screen. I am not a teacher. I am a practitioner. I'm happy to entertain your questions. And if I have the knowledge, I certainly am happy to answer. I also would open the floor at this point if you'd just like to talk about your experience this morning. These next few minutes belong to you. Please use them in any way that you'd like until we have to wrap up. So my trusty friends down in Tech Center down there, if anybody wants to raise your hand and speak, someone, there's questions in the chat. Shobha asked, what do you mean by being actively compassionate to yourself? Well, I think I gave you some clues on that, but, and I can't see you, Shobha, but what I would say is imagine yourself being compassionate to someone else. You see someone in need and I know you would treat them with compassion. Your heart would open and you would want to help. But oftentimes that's not how we treat ourselves. We're very critical of ourselves. Or when we have a sore shoulder or a sore arm, or when we fall. Have you ever fallen and slipped on the ice and all of a sudden you're down on the ground and the first thing you do is like jump up? Because I don't know why we do it, but we do. Maybe it would be more compassionate to sit for a moment, to scan yourself, to see if something hurts, to treat yourself the way you would open your heart to someone else. To allow yourself that love that you have and that you express always to others, to turn it inwards and actively be that kind to yourself. So hopefully that answers your question. Someone else, thank you for asking it, Genevieve. Thank you for being here today. The major differences between therapeutic touch and Reiki, I can give you some. Because this is a question that gets asked. I'm not a Reiki practitioner. I have practiced Reiki no, I haven't done that at all. Erase that. I have practiced therapeutic touch on Reiki practitioners, and I've asked them, and they have told me, one in particular, that it feels different, but it wasn't very helpful. She couldn't actually tell me how. But what I know of Reiki is a regulated bunch of symbols, I believe, that you have to practice, whereas as you've seen in therapeutic touch, it's quite simple. Reiki, there's a bunch of different lineages of Reiki. In my limited understanding, you can use different types. Different teachers have developed different types of Reiki. Therapeutic touch is the same across the world. I believe that Reiki is based on the Japanese ideas of energy, whereas therapeutic touch is mostly based in the Indian philosophy. Blue Star has a lot of Reiki practitioners. I'm sure many of them could give you a better answer. I thought I saw Indira earlier. If she's still out there, she could maybe type into the chat what some of the differences are from, what she experienced today. But we've now exceeded my knowledge of what those differences are. Okay. I have another question here from Dahlia. Hi, Dahlia. Oh, that wasn't a question. Oh, that was very kind of you. Thank you so much. I would love to be a teacher one day, but as I said, being a recognized practitioner. I haven't finished my workbook yet. When I do that, finish that, maybe I can become a teacher. But I am passionate about it, and hopefully you felt that in today's session. All right. Anybody wants to share an experience? Anybody with that this was completely new for? Zahir's afraid to try and talk again, but the chat's working well. Okay. Oh, hello.
Namaskar, Ramaa Devi. It's
Namaskar, Janavi.
so nice to see you and everyone else. Um, while you were explaining the difference between Reiki and touch therapy, this is new for me, by the way, the touch therapy. I've done a bit of Reiki, um, but what came to mind is that in both cases, we have to be the instrument. Not so? Isn't that so? Because you said some of the practitioners, they weren't actually feeling the energy in their hands, but yet it was effective in the people. So what came to mind is that um, they were being the instrument, they were channeling this energy even though they weren't really that sensitive to the energy, right? Is that
Yeah.
the
And I think that's where that detachment comes in. You don't get all involved in your own head and your own self. There's
mm-hmm.
an energy field out there. There's a universal energy, and if you center and ground and open yourself to it, then that will come through. You can hear it in my voice. I'm 100% convinced. Now, I don't know what happens exactly at noon, so I'm very mindful of the clock now. It is 11:58. Someone's asking if you could incorporate it with Reiki, or I think they meant Reiki. I wouldn't want to answer that question. My intuition would would kind of go back to what Shobha says. They're all coming from the same source. The ideas around these things are all um, about working with the energetic field, but I'm not a Reiki practitioner and I don't know exactly how all that works. So I know that as a practitioner, like I've given you a really high flying introduction to this today, and we use colors, we use temperature, we use all kinds of different things. So what we did today was for self-care, right? For your wellness, for you in your home, and if you're kid fell and bumped their knee, I wouldn't tell you not to do it, but I wouldn't also tell you to hang a shingle outside your door right now. This was, another way to take care of ourselves. So I'm going to close off the questions and comments. I'm going to once again thank you so much for your attention. This was a real experiment for us in how we did this today. I'm just so happy to be able to share this with you, and I hope that it helps you in some small way. We've just, like I said, touched the tip of the iceberg. But if it's struck a chord with you, if you're interested, if you want to know more, please feel free to reach out to me. The ashram has my coordinates. I'm not going to flash them up on the screen or anything, but I'm certainly happy to help you find resources. Or to clarify anything that we did today, or to tell you where you can buy this particular book. Like I said, today's course was mostly based on that book by Crystal and ALISON. So thank you for being here, for your presence, for your energy, for your smiles, for your encouragement. And to the team at the ashram who were so patient with me. They gave me support and technical tips. Thank you so much for all your expertise in making this session happen. To the wellness practitioners who were in a little group we had and who work in the wellness center at the ashram, you inspire me all the time. All the good things you do, all the things you have learned and share. And lastly, of course, but not least, to my guru, my teacher, my inspiration, to our Sri Asudeva, without his guidance, without his support and love, I would definitely not be here. So a big shout out and a thank you to him. I know these 40 days are so special to all of us. He's turned on a dime and made them, virtual, and made it possible for us to feel this energy and to grow on our journey. So I am eternally grateful. To all of you, be well, take care, be safe. Namaskar.